This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Emily Brass. Janet Stewart is away. Wasted food is not only causing Winnipeggers to throw away hundreds of dollars every year. A new report from City Hall says nearly half of the food that ends up in Winnipeg landfills is still good to eat. It's prompted one group to push for change to save money and the environment. CBC's Brittany Greenslade has more.
Janine Lafort is checking her fridge for leftovers.
Okay, let's see what I need to use up this week.
And food that's close to going bad.
I'm a big believer in kind of using up everything that you have and not wasting things.
It's why the dietitian and mom of 3 plans her family's meals weekly and helps others do the same. She teaches people how to get the most out of their food.
A little piece of celery I had left. Don't throw that out, still edible, even the leaves. So I'm gonna put that in my soup, tastes really good in soup. Have this little piece of zucchini that's kind of wrinkly. It's not moldy, it's not bad, you can still eat that.
But she says too often those pieces get thrown out. According to the Winnipeg Food Council, food waste costs the average household more than $1,100 every year. On top of that, the council's new report says nearly half of household food waste in Winnipeg is avoidable.
That's really high, and that represents a lot of methane that's being produced in our landfill that doesn't have to be.
It's why the group is pushing Winnipeg to move to a citywide residential food waste collection system.
Finding ways that we can mitigate the impacts of climate change so that we have a more reliable and secure food system is also really important.
The results of the 2-year pilot project haven't been released, but the city says within its first year, the amount of food diverted from landfills showed a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, equivalent to a car driving across Canada 48 times. It hasn't said if it will go ahead with a citywide plan.
If we consider the organics that are already in the landfill, already emitting methane, we're already going to be feeling those impacts for years to come. So the time to act is now.
The Food Council says time is another thing we can't afford to waste. Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The window for reopening the Millennium Library by mid-January has nearly passed. More than a month after the fatal stabbing of Tyree Kaye, city officials still don't have a date for when it'll open again to the public. The city said last month it hoped the library could resume regular services this week, but today Mayor Scott Gillingham and others couldn't promise that would happen. CBC's Cameron McLean is live in the newsroom. Cameron, what's the city saying now about the timeline for reopening the library?
I asked that question to the mayor, the chair of the Community Services Committee, and the city's CAO. They all said the same thing: soon. But what does that mean? It could be in the next few days, or it could be in weeks. Yesterday, the head of the union representing library workers told members of the media not to count on the library opening this week. I asked CAO Michael Jack about that. Here's what he said.
It's going to be soon. When we're ready to tell you exactly when, I assure you, you'll all be the first to know, but it will be soon. And the mayor, Councillor Orlico, and others, they've been clear that they certainly want to see this open by the end of January, and I'm feeling very, very confident we'll be able to do that.
As you just heard, Jack said he's confident the library will open by the end of the month, but even that is not guaranteed at this point.
So what's the city waiting for before it announces a reopening date?
The city is still discussing security measures with staff. It's already started training staff on how to handle security issues. Jack says all options are still on the table. That includes the possible return of metal detectors and bag checks, like what we saw back in 2019.
So what kinds of services should people expect when the library does reopen?
All services are expected to be back once the library opens to the public at the end of this month, possibly. We'll see the return of community safety hosts. Those are certified security guards who receive training in trauma-related crisis work and harm reduction. The city has also hired a consultant to do a safety audit of the building. They could recommend physical changes to the layout of the library. But Mayor Scott Gillingham said the reopening will happen before those recommendations are made.
I think it's important just to reiterate that preliminary measures will be put in place, and what we see when the library opens most likely will not be the final configuration of the library, nor perhaps even the final configuration of what agencies are in the library.
One thing that likely won't return immediately is the community connection space that opened in the lobby of the library. This connected library users with social supports. CAO Michael Jack said the focus is on getting the library open, and community connections will come later.
Thanks, Cameron. We'll be watching for more details on that throughout the week. CBC's Cameron McLean reporting live in the newsroom. The Manitoba government is doubling the amount of money it's putting in for an expansion of a childcare centre in Brandon. The province is supplying an additional $600,000 for a project at the city's YMCA Early Learning Centre. That brings its total contribution to $1.2 million. The expansion will double the number of spaces at the centre from 48 to 96.
The project features initiatives that will enhance the services offered to the community, especially for youth, seniors, and families. These initiatives include increasing space for supportive programming and creating 2 outdoor play areas.
The project is expected to be completed in November. A 3-story apartment block will have to be demolished after an early morning fire on Gertie Street. An off-duty police officer spotted heavy smoke and flames coming from the vacant block near McDermott. Several ladder trucks and ground crews poured water on the fire. A drone was also used to help fire crews fight the blaze. Because of the structural damage, the building will have to be torn down. Several nearby streets were closed as firefighters battled the flames. Mount Carmel Clinic wants to help connect more people to culturally relevant programming. The Community Health Center in Winnipeg's North End is already working with an elder and knowledge keepers to offer services with an Indigenous perspective. Now, a new funding boost will expand that work. CBC's Alana Cole explains.
So this is one of our round rooms, a space that we can use for ceremony, traditional teachings. We have meetings in here. It's just a really nice, safe space to...
Inside Mount Carmel Clinic on Main Street, you can see doctors, nurses, or pharmacists. There's a program for expecting moms. There's also a growing effort to connect clients and patients with Indigenous healing practices. Babette Schaffner is the executive director.
Primarily, we've been talking to both our elders, our aunties, our knowledge keepers, and our community who have said we need to find different ways and better ways and more ways to bring healing practices, Indigenous healing practices and traditions to our community and our organization.
Some examples include land-based teachings, making sure there's a place for people to smudge, and an elder and auntie help in a 12-step program for women struggling with addictions.
When you ask people what they want to heal, generally, the best idea is to help them get that because it's their healing journey, not ours. And so we want to support our community.
So we have to begin to think differently.
Now, $100,000 from the Bell Let's Talk Diversity Fund will help. It's one of 11 grants totaling $1.1 million. At this clinic, they'll use the money to hire an Indigenous cultural connector. Schaffner says the clinic serves about 10,000 to 15,000 people a year. Most are Indigenous.
We're trying to create programs that we know touches the heart and the spirit of our people.
Elder May Louise Campbell works with Mount Carmel Clinic. The new role will support elders and knowledge keepers at the clinic and connect clients with outside community programs. Campbell says that's important. She points to one example where clients from Mount Carmel Clinic were also part of a carpentry training program through the Clan Mothers Healing Village.
And you should see them. They're just amazing now. They're just so excited and feeling so happy and so have found who they really are as women.
Mount Carmel hopes to have the new position up and running in the next couple of months. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
More evidence of possible unmarked graves at a former residential school, this time in Kenora. Ground-penetrating radar has detected more than 170 anomalies at the former St. Mary's Indian Residential School. The Washosh Anigam Nation says the anomalies, referred to as plausible burials, were found in cemetery grounds associated with the former residential school. The institution was operated by the Roman Catholic Church from 1897 to 1972. Wayne Mason's father is a survivor of that school. He says every time he hears of another discovery, it triggers his family.
It's not the first, and it's not going to be the last. We've got probably but we're looking at probably another 20,000, 30,000 people that are still missing.
The National Center for Truth and Reconciliation says it knows of at least 36 students who died while attending the school in Kenora. Washosh Anigam Nation will meet with government officials tomorrow to talk about resources to continue the investigation. Now, emotional support is available for anyone affected by residential schools. You can access crisis referral services by calling the 24-hour support line on your screen. That's 1-866-925-4419. Well, Manitoba's advocate for children and youth says the province still hasn't fulfilled some key recommendations aimed at protecting young people. Sherry Gott says there still isn't enough movement on ideas from the Phoenix Sinclair Inquiry report 9 years ago. Phoenix was 5 when she died after years of neglect and abuse. One recommendation still not fulfilled is that child welfare workers have a maximum of 20 cases at a time. Gott's report also says the province has yet to act on a recommendation to develop a mental health and addiction strategy specific to young people. A Winnipeg artist is reviving a small gallery with new programming, and it's not bound by genre or geography. CBC's Janelle Henry has more on the vision for Blinker's art and project space.
He volunteers his time so people can enjoy art from around the world. Luther Kunedu recently took over Blinker's art and project space. His latest curated exhibition is called I Never Knew What to Do with My Hands by Berlin-based artist Melanie Jane Wolf.
With every artist, I do extensive research on them, and I had been looking for practices that engages with performance, choreography, and theater, and she kind of had all of that elements in her work.
I never knew what to do with my hands.
The work is 2 films about performance as labor. They play on separate floors of the gallery.
These bodies are kind of standing their ground, working towards a better version of themselves or an idealized version of themselves.
Kunedu says the film on the main floor is of actresses rehearsing a line from the artist's favorite play.
Take it where, man?
Downstairs is stand-up performers, a critical voice to those above. Wolf, who is Australian, came into the visual arts scene through her choreography work. She says 20 years ago, she never dreamed she'd have a solo show, especially in Winnipeg.
Because I worked in theatre for so long and in performance, this is still kind of an exciting thing to me that my work is showing in places where I'm not.
She called Blinker's new genre non-specific mandate legitimate freedom for artists like her.
Art is so important to me because I love that we can think through questions and problems and just beauty and being alive through other forms than language.
As a multidisciplinary artist himself, Kunedu understands not all work fits into the same category, which is why he's opened Blinkers up to all forms of art.
With exaltation.
Janelle Henry, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, CBC weather specialist Fiona Odlum joins us now. It's still pretty mild out there this evening.
Yeah, we're going to continue to see this mild streak, Emily, for 7 more days.
Woo!
We're on the upswing. We've got a lot of warm air coming our way. Let's take a look at our current conditions right now here in Winnipeg. We're sitting at -10 right now with the wind chill feeling like -18. You know, we've been feeling this warm air for 3 weeks now, and Environment and Climate Change Canada says, yes, Winnipeg is definitely warmer than the 30-year average. And, you know, in terms of when will that cold air finally return, we're looking towards the end of January. Right now, we have actually some areas within the province that are seeing a partly cloudy sky, still relatively cloudy here in Winnipeg. We are looking for fog developing again throughout the evening. We could see a little bit of the moon tonight. Have you seen that comet yet? I haven't been able to see it yet. I would love anybody to send me a picture. I would share that for sure. All right, look at this widespread cloud that we're going to be looking at. We're going to watch for fog as well being an issue throughout the morning, again tonight and into tomorrow. We have a bit of a change in terms of the wind. We've been seeing a pretty consistent north wind. We're going to see an east wind moving in. It's not going to be really strong like it was last night that caused all that visibility concern around Winnipeg. We're going to see that shifting a bit. But in terms of sunshine, we're not going to see any of that until Saturday. Look how much the cloud cover grows as we move throughout the week and the heat begins to rise. All right, so at midnight, we're looking for -11 degrees, a partly cloudy sky, a really light wind. Yesterday, at times, we had wind gusts into the 30s and 40s overnight. We're looking for -13 and a cloudy sky. First thing tomorrow morning, we're also going to be watching for that fog again throughout the early morning tomorrow. By lunchtime, -9. We could see a little sliver of sunshine between 12 and 1 o'clock tomorrow, and then it's gone. So get your dose of vitamin D during that time. We're looking for -8 degrees for Thursday, -5 for Friday. And you have to just love this viewer photo. This was sent to us from Brendine Barkley. She snapped this very happy squirrel with a nut right there in St. Vital Park. Isn't that fantastic? Thank you always so much for sending us your viewer photos.
So moving from squirrels to bugs, they are everywhere, and understanding them and the role they play in biodiversity is key.
And you know, in Manitoba, we might actually have the bugs that can unlock some of those mysteries. So I went to the University of Manitoba to learn more about their very unique collection of insects.
And this is the wow tray.
Jason Gibbs is the curator of the J.B. Wallace R.E. Ruffley Museum of Entomology at the University of Manitoba. He says what started out as a small collection rapidly grew into a multi-million swarm.
This is a collection that was formed about 100 years ago by the first entomologist who worked, started the department. And at first it was quite small, but over the decades it increased and gotten larger and larger. And now we're at somewhere about 2.5 to 3 million specimens, but we don't have an exact number.
The oldest specimen dates back to the late 1800s, and they've all been carefully pinned, tagged, and preserved. And Gibbs says more than a century later, they're still adding new species to the collection.
When I started here 6 years ago, the number of wild bee species known from the province, from decades and decades of people doing research on bees, was 236. It's now 392. I remember the first time I found one that was actually an undescribed species that no one had ever identified it at all. It didn't have a name. And I think I did a little dance. I mean, I kind of jumped out of my chair and was just like, this is amazing.
Gibbs gets requests from across Canada and the world to study the specimens in the collection. And now, as the climate crisis is heating up, Gibbs says these insects could hold some important answers.
We don't have time machines that we can go back and look at how these things have changed over time, but we have this collection, and so we can go back and see what were people collecting in 1913, what were they collecting in 1916, 1960, up until the 2000s.
Research shows insect numbers are declining due to climate change and pesticide use in Canada, but scientists believe there's a bigger threat to these tiny invertebrates.
Habitat loss, and that one might be the biggest and most important issue of all. And we have a lot of important work to do in Canada to think about halting and reversing nature loss in our most heavily used areas.
Jeremy Kerr specializes in macroecology and conservation at the University of Ottawa. He says collections like these are key to understanding how some insects might respond as the earth warms.
They provide us with historical insights that are not available using any other technique. There are no shortcuts to be had there.
Back on the Manitoba campus, Gibbs says one way people can help insects is by planting native prairie plants, but also to pay attention to see which bugs are buzzing around.
You can be the person to go and find that undescribed species, and you can be the person to name it. And, it's a really exciting opportunity.
Fiona Odlum, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, still ahead, the inflation rate cooled last month, but Canadians are still dealing with sticker shock at grocery checkouts. We'll have more on that after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Canada's annual inflation rate cooled down to 6.3% in December. Statistics Canada says that's thanks to the big dip last month in fuel prices. But relief at the gas pump is not cushioning the sticker shock for Canadians at grocery checkouts. CBC's Anis Haydari takes a closer look.
Wholesalers like Roseland Produce see food price jumps before you do. Fruit and vegetables get shipped around Ontario from businesses like this, but the price of everything they need keeps going up, from labor to the food itself.
The costs now are pretty much unprecedented. We haven't seen them like this in years. We haven't seen them before at all, actually.
Some produce here has doubled in cost since before the pandemic.
We could be into the new normal of the price of produce.
It's a new normal that's landed on supermarket shelves.
I tend to watch prices all the time, and everything just keeps going up.
Anybody with a large family, that hurts.
It's hard to find vegetables that go on sale.
Vegetables, in particular, kept food prices soaring, up more than 13%. And even as overall inflation drops, experts say ongoing problems like weather and distribution mean food prices may not.
Saying that inflation is down still is, consistent with high elevated food prices. And I do think that we're going to be in this environment for a while.
And Canadians are not just spending more at the grocery store.
Unfortunately, now, in order to stay in business, a lot of restaurants and pubs are going to have to increase pricing.
Even if inflation drops, prices will continue to rise, just not as quickly. And anyone buying or selling food will need to adapt.
I don't think when prices go up, you ever really see prices go down. I think that's just the nature of being in business.
So food prices may keep getting hotter and won't be cooling off soon. Anis Haydari, CBC News, Calgary.
A new report is out on the risks of alcohol. It says no amount of booze is completely safe, and now Canadian researchers are giving the strongest warning yet about the health risks associated with drinking alcohol. CBC's Garrett Barry has more.
In the past decade or so, we've heard that 15 drinks a week for men and 10 a week for women was low risk, but this new report changes that calculation completely. The new guideline: 2 drinks a week for anybody to be in that low risk category. It's driven by a review of 5,000 studies, many of them brand new.
There have been huge steps in our understanding of the relationship between alcohol and several types of disease, including 7 types of cancer. We're also much more refined in our methodologies, and that has had huge impact in the way we understand the relationship between alcohol and cardiovascular disease.
That link between alcohol and cancer is one of the driving forces behind this new guidance. The authors write that it's often overlooked, but recent data suggests alcohol causes 7,000 cancer deaths each year in Canada.
It's a product that is consumed by 80% of Canadians, and they have a right to know about the effects of this type of consumption.
The guidelines state that less than 2 drinks weekly is low risk. Between 3 to 6, they say you're at an increased risk for cancer, breast and colon cancer, for example. And after 7, your risk for heart disease or stroke increases. The risks increase rapidly with each additional drink after that. And these authors are pushing for another change too, not just to drinking habits in the country, they also want to see standardized labels added to alcohol that show just how many serving sizes are in each package.
They are trying to enable people to make more informed decisions for themselves, and I think that's obviously a good thing to do. I don't know about statements like, quote, no alcohol consumption is safe, right? Like that may be true, but is that really helpful? I think we have to appreciate that alcohol is a part of many people's social events or activities.
The authors say people who want to decrease their alcohol use need support, and that support is information that makes it easier to make hard decisions. Garrett Barry, CBC News, St. John's.
For months, staffing shortages in hospitals across Canada have added unprecedented strain on access to health care. In Nova Scotia, some hospitals are now seeing nurse vacancy rates as high as 80%. That means those who are working in these understaffed places are sometimes forced to work 24-hour shifts. CBC's Brett Ruskin has more.
We are hearing stats from the Nova Scotia healthcare system, looking at vacancy rates for nursing. 80% vacancy rates up in Cape Breton at Cape Breton Regional Hospital in the unit for the licensed practical nurses working in the emergency department unit there. In that same facility, an 83% vacancy rate for nurse practitioners working in the mental health and addictions unit. Some of the worst overall facilities include Cape Breton Regional Hospital. That is the hospital where Alison Holtoff was brought to. She was a 37-year-old mother. Her husband had brought her to the hospital back on New Year's Eve when she was complaining about stomach pain. They waited 6 hours for her to see a doctor, and she eventually died in the emergency department there. We spoke with Janet Hazelton. She's the president of Nova Scotia Nurses Union. Here's what she had to say about what nurses are going through right now.
They have to work extra, they have to work short, so instead of having 5 patients, they have 7 or 8 or 10. So it's really adds to the workload and of the nurses that are left, and it's really difficult to work short on a good day.
And so really a cycle of nurses getting too tired with the system, moving out of the system, looking for other types of healthcare jobs, making it even more difficult and challenging for those still working as nurses in the Nova Scotia healthcare system. The government continues on saying that they plan on doing everything they can to help the healthcare workers as well as Nova Scotians. We also heard from the Office of Healthcare Professionals Retention, and they talked about how there's been an investment of $340,000 most recently back in August to try to bring in international workers to the healthcare system here in Nova Scotia. Also that there is the highest financial incentives of any other healthcare system in this part of the country. So overall, we have union officials saying that there needs to be union representatives. There needs to be representatives from the employer, the health authority, as well as the government, all sitting down at the table to discuss this serious issue facing Nova Scotia. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Emergency crews have switched from rescue to recovery efforts at the site of a missile strike on a residential building in Dnipro, Ukraine. Officials say the number of dead has now climbed to 45 people, and dozens more were injured in the attack over the weekend. Residents of the city flocked to the devastated area today. They waved signs and called on the international community to ramp up donations of air defenses and precision weapons. The attack in Dnipro is one of the deadliest for civilians in several months. The family of a Canadian who volunteered to fight for Ukraine says he's been killed. Grigory Sekmistrenko was a medic. His father says the 28-year-old was killed over the weekend in fighting near Bakhmut. Britain's Metropolitan Police says it's reviewing more cases against its officers and employees from the past 10 years. The force is facing fresh criticism after a police officer yesterday pleaded guilty to multiple charges of rape and other sexual offenses. CBC's Abby Kuadawson reports.
This high-profile abuse case involving a London police officer has sparked further accusations of misogyny and criticism that the Metropolitan Police was protecting its own, not the public. 12 victims have detailed a long list of horrific treatment by David Carrick, being restrained with police-issued handcuffs and left immobile for hours, forced to drink his urine, strangled and raped. One ex-partner says Carrick boasted he could kill her without leaving any evidence and that nobody would believe her over him, a cop. He has served in an elite unit tasked with guarding prime ministers and embassies and is accused of using his job to intimidate and terrorize his victims. The victims say they were afraid to leave him or press charges because of possible repercussions.
For anyone to have gone through such torment is harrowing, but for it to have happened at the hands of someone they entrusted to keep people safe is almost beyond comprehension.
Carrick has pleaded guilty to 49 criminal charges, including 24 counts of rape. He is expected to be sentenced in a few weeks. London police have now dismissed him, but they're under fire for failing to act over the last 2 decades. An ex-girlfriend had already accused Carrick of assault when the Met Police first vetted and hired him in 2001. In the years that followed, the force was made aware of 8 violent incidents involving women, but Carrick was not disciplined and carried on working. The police commissioner, Mark Rowley, says they've let the public down.
We've let London down over those 20 years. We missed opportunities when he joined, and subsequently, as behaviour came to the fore, that we should have removed him from policing.
The Metropolitan Police says it's currently investigating some 800 officers facing over 1,000 claims of domestic and sexual abuse. Abby Cuevas in CBC News, London.
New information is emerging about the killing of a former Afghan MP considered a champion of women's rights. Mursal Nubizada was shot dead this past weekend at her home in Kabul. A group of Canadian MPs had been asking the federal government to bring her to Canada before she was killed.
We came together as a all-party group to advocate for their really urgent movement to safety and to come to Canada.
Nabizada was a member of parliament in Afghanistan before the Taliban took over in 2021. The circumstances surrounding her death are unclear, but police say she and her bodyguard were killed by an unknown gunman, and her brother was injured in the attack at her home. She was one of the few female MPs who stayed in Kabul after the Taliban takeover. China has escalated its threats against Taiwan by carrying out large-scale drills, and Beijing continues to maintain strong opposition to the idea of Taiwan's independence. Both sides are closely watching Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine to see who prevails in the conflict. Evan Dyer looks at why that matters.
The incursions just keep getting bigger. Last week, 28 Chinese warplanes flew over the median line of the Taiwan Strait. Chinese warships hover off Taiwan's coast, and Taiwan's government never knows when a provocation could be the start of a real invasion.
The center line of the Taiwan Strait was respected by both sides of the Taiwan Strait. But the Chinese now fly their warplanes deliberately across the median line.
Beijing has always claimed Taiwan as Chinese territory, but lately the rhetoric is getting hotter. China responds more angrily when Canadian and Western politicians visit the island. Taiwan is rushing to upgrade its military, and both sides are watching events in Ukraine. At first, Putin's invasion seemed to present China with a model to follow and an opportunity to act while the West had its hands full with Russia. But Russia's bitter losses have instead given Taiwan reason to hope.
And that is something that we are learning from. And the Ukrainian military seem to be very effective in dealing with one of the most powerful military in the world.
But China is also learning from Russia's missteps, says Wu, and this former Obama administration official believes President Xi could be tempted to believe his forces can do better.
Xi Jinping is under enormous pressure domestically because of these huge COVID outbreaks, because of the downturn in the economy. And I think if he is looking to try to shore up domestic support, we may see him try to undertake what Biden termed at this time last year a minor incursion of Taiwan.
One possible target could be Taiwanese islands close to the shore of mainland China. That kind of operation, short of a full invasion of Taiwan, would present the West with a difficult choice on whether to intervene. The Trudeau government says it's already contributing to Taiwan's defense by sending frigates to patrol the Taiwan Strait. But unlike the Biden administration, it hasn't said what it will do in the event of a real attack. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, still ahead, we'll take you someplace warm. Then Fiona Odlum brings us back to reality with the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. It's lush, green, and warm. The Leaf at Assiniboine Park is home to gardens from around the world. And at the top, on the 3rd level, in a temperature-controlled environment, is the new home of the Shirley Richardson Butterfly Garden. Today, our community reporter, Shanley Vidal, got a chance to learn more about where the butterflies come from and how you can see tropical butterflies in the middle of January.
Hello. There's one that's definitely ready, so we can tell that his wings are all dry and he's flying around already. So if we let him out into the butterfly gardens here, he could fly around, he could go find food. We get butterflies in at their 3rd stage. So there's 4 stages to a butterfly's life cycle: the egg stage, the caterpillar stage, and then the chrysalis stage. We get them from Costa Rica in the chrysalis stage. So that is the only way that you can get them in. So this is our emergence chamber. So as you can tell, we've got a couple of humidifiers in there to bring the optimum humidity is 80%. You can see this one here that's just come out of its chrysalis, but its wings are formed. If it's still hanging out there, it's still drying off, which could take a few hours. So all of the butterflies here are Costa Rican butterflies. We get in a new shipment every 2 weeks. And we do have some reoccurring butterflies that do really well that we know we have a lot of knowledge on. So those will keep getting back, but we're also trying new ones now and then. The most spectacular of the Costa Rican butterflies is the blue morpho. And so the males will have, when their wings are open, the inside is this brilliant blue color. And then when they're closed, the outside almost looks like they have little eyes. So, and they're huge. I love seeing someone's face light up at whatever it is that they're interested in. So for some people, they're excited about the butterflies. For others, it's the plants, because we do have different plants up here that they don't have downstairs in the biomes. It brings what I'm passionate about is animal care, brings it to the Leaf, which is really exciting. So we're gonna see if this one's ready to come out. So I may just encourage it, let it know that it can fly. I'll just get my finger underneath and see if it's ready. Are you ready to fly? Here we go. But that's it. Now I have to figure out which one that is because I have to keep records.
Well, not exactly the best weather for butterflies today in Winnipeg, but still not too bad. How's the forecast looking?
You know what? What we're going to be looking for is a really nice continuation of what we had. So in terms of stability, it's stable. But for my liking, it's a little bit too warm. I have to show you this great photo that was sent to us from Carmen, Manitoba. This was sent in the early part of the month for our first full moon, our wolf moon of the year. And it's just right over in the middle of town there. Absolutely gorgeous. Tonight, your moon is going to be more of a waning crescent, only 23% illumination. So we're setting up for another full moon coming soon. But thank you so much for sending that great picture in. All right, current conditions. We're sitting here at -10 at the Forks, -12 in Morris, -10 in Steinbach. As we look towards Swan River, -10 in your area. We had lots of sunshine for you late in the afternoon in Dauphin, and -16. So all that sunshine brought in a little bit of cool air through that zone. And look at this, -14 still in Churchill, -10 in the Lynn Lake region, -9 over in the Paw. Okay, so we're going to be looking for some widespread light snow. It doesn't really accumulate to a whole lot, but up in Broquette, we're going to be looking for about a centimeter of snow in the next 12 hours, but you can see this little dotting of blue, and so we're going to be watching for that. There's going to be light snow throughout the evening and the start of tomorrow morning. As we look towards southern Manitoba, a very similar situation. Over towards that southwest corner, that's where we start seeing the most of the snow coming through. As it starts to move across the province, it starts to peter out a little bit. The fog, she's not done with us yet. Let's take a look at Winnipeg here. We're going to be watching for some wind, for the fog to bring us down into visibility tonight to 3.5 kilometers. So that's getting to be a little bit of a problem for us. We're going to continue to see moments throughout the day tomorrow where we're going to be watching for this visibility to be hampering us out as we're driving around. The wind will not help us clear things out. You're going to see, especially in Dauphin, it's going to be incredibly calm, so that doesn't really push that fog out. It just stays calm really for the next several days. So what we're looking for in terms of temperature for in towards Western Ontario, we're looking for a cooler evening tonight, -15 in Red Lake. In towards Winnipeg and Steinbach, -12 and -15, fog and flurries again. That's going to be the same as we look towards Brandon and Swan River. As we go further north, we do see a slight cool down and a light chance of some snow over the course of the evening tonight. We saw that on the radar. Tomorrow, lots of cloud cover. We don't have a lot of sunshine on our radar. We could see some peaks in the Swan River area, but it's limited. Fog in the morning, light snow through the morning as well. Very similar to what we had today. Maybe just cloudy for Western Ontario, Emily.
Thank you, Fiona.
You're welcome.
I've killed every single plant I've ever had in my possession, and that does not give me much confidence for the future.
Still ahead, Gen Zers and millennials contemplate their reasons to have or not have children. That's after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. In the series, Should I Have Kids? CBC Manitoba's Creator Network asked Gen Zers and millennials to contemplate the reasons to have kids or not. They reveal those reasons in personal essays and videos, from unresolved grief to finances, identity, and the climate crisis. In this first-person essay and the short film We're Waiting, 25-year-old Samantha Dawn asks herself whether she's ready for kids.
I wear the same pajamas every day. I accidentally skip meals on the regular and have successfully poisoned myself by trying new recipes too many times to count. I'm 25 and I don't think I'm ready to have kids. It's hard to imagine that I could take care of a baby when I feel like one myself. A small, little person that I'm fully responsible for. It all sounds so intimidating and scary, but did my parents feel ready when they had me? What if I mess it up? I've killed every single plant I've ever had in my possession, and that does not give me much confidence for the future. I have 2 cats, and they already feel like a handful. It's hard to imagine taking care of something else on top of that. My partner and I have been together for almost 8 years now, and I'm really starting to feel the pressure. Whenever we meet up with our parents, they ask the same question.
So, when are we gonna see some grandchildren?
And I know they mean well, and they're probably just really excited. I never know how to answer those questions. I just laugh and brush it off, and I just try to avoid it altogether. She's even started to call my cats her grandsons. On Facebook, I see people from high school having kids and starting families. It feels so weird. It makes me feel like I should follow in their footsteps and do what I'm supposed to be doing at my age. I think I'm so scared because once I have a kid, it means I can't be one anymore. I'll need to be a role model and have to have my life together. No more messy rooms and fast food on the way home. It means no more late nights and sleeping in, last-second changes of plans and impromptu sleepovers. To me, it means giving up independence and spontaneity. I am so scared to give everything up and to grow up. I know I'm probably just overreacting, but those are the thoughts that run through my brain. And I could be completely wrong. I could have a chance to share my favorite things with a child and make new memories. And I might be missing out on something great. I am not sure what's in store for me. Maybe I'll have kids one day, and maybe I won't. I know it just won't be anytime soon. I know I have some growing up to do, but in the meantime, I'm going to soak up my independence and live for myself.
Well, still ahead, your daily lift, and Fiona Odlum is back with the 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
You will absolutely need your parka tomorrow morning. It'll be cold when we get up, but we are warming to -7, watching for fog in the morning. And then this warmth stays with us into the weekend. And then finally, as we start looking towards Tuesday, that, Emily, is when things start to return back to our seasonal values. So that's good news.
I guess it was bound to happen.
It was bound to happen. Now, you know, I always thought it was a big outing to take my dogs to the dog park for fun. But it turns out that there's some sacred spaces they could be going to.
Yeah, that's right. Hundreds of people in Spain today took their pets to church. Yes, church. Here's your daily lift. Priests blessed the critters to mark St. Anthony's Day. He was the patron saint of animals, and in Madrid, a priest delivered mass as dogs barked from the pews. Heaven knows, those are some pious pets. That was the CBC Winnipeg News. We'll be back at 11. Have a good evening.
Have a great night, everyone.